Hello and welcome to People and Power. I'm Summer El-Shahat. The film you're about to see looks at Libyans who've left their home to escape the regime of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Some of them have lived in exile for almost 40 years. They come from varied backgrounds and all walks of life. But the one thing they all have in common is a profound yearning to go back home to Libya. Filmmaker Mohammed Makhlouf, himself a Libyan exile, shows that, for all of them, exile is a wound that time never heals.
These are the stories of exiles. Arabs who say their only crime has been their ambition to develop their country's economy and secure its resources, to establish equality, democracy, safety and prosperity in order to create a better life for their children. They're Libyans who lived under a monarchy they remember as constitutional and democratic, where freedom of expression and freedom of press flourished. They say they were forced to leave because their lives were threatened by Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi, who stands accused by them of unprecedented violence, political repression, and of violating the dignity of the Libyan people over the past 38 years. Their stories are of tragedy, of political suffering, and of pain. They still hope for the day when their suffering and exile will end, a day when they can return to Libya. Many have died before that dream could be realized. Mansour Al-Kikia runs the Political Science and Geography Department at the University of Texas at San Antonio. He spent more than 30 years in exile in the United States. His father, Omar Pasha, was exiled for 20 years by the Italian occupation. His cousin, Mansour Rashid, was former foreign minister and Libya's representative at the United Nations. He joined the opposition, was allegedly kidnapped by the Libyan intelligence in Cairo and Egypt in 1993, and he's never been heard of since. Following this incident, Mansour became a fervent opponent of Gaddafi and his politics.
Being in exile is being torn away from your roots, being torn away from what you know into the unknown. Now for the last 40 years, close to 37 years, maybe 40 years, we have been living in a virtual prison, and just, I mean, it very much reminds me of the age of colonialism during the Italian period of fascism, when Libyans were forced to immigrate. They immigrated to Egypt, they went to Chad, they went to Algeria, they went to Palestine, they went all over the world because the Italian fascists pushed them out. Yet they came back. They came back. And they resisted the tyranny. And they were able to establish an open Libya, which unfortunately didn't last for too long. My father went through the same type of experience that I'm going through now. Diaspora is not new in my life and my experience. Gaddafi does not own Libya. It's Libya who owns Gaddafi. The case in pre-Gaddafi's Libya, people can speak up and they can tell the monarch you're wrong. They can speak up and they can do things that they can never dream of doing today. I've never in my life seen people hung during the time of the monarchy. The only time I've ever seen anyone hung in my own life was during Gaddafi's rule. And people unjustly hung. Unjustly hung for voicing their opinion, their views. As long as this attachment to something called Libya, for me at least, is there, it will continue to be a heavy burden. Every single time you eat something, it's Libya. You wake up, it's Libya. Because your point of reference is Libya. The idea that, oh, you're living outside here in ease, and no, we're not. Only the body is living in ease, but the mind is not living in ease. It has never lived in ease. Since the first day we left Libya. My senses and my feelings for Libya cannot be expressed with words. They can only be expressed with actions. And that's the minimum thing I can do. It's because I love Libya that I'm willing to endure exile.
I'll always be an Arab, and as for Muslim, I mean, that's just, it's ingrained into my system, and there's no way to get it out of there. So, I mean, whether I would want to or not. But as for being a Libyan, I mean, my family's there. The people who care about most of me in the world, the people who care most about me in this world live there. That's where I can go one day, and I'll be accepted with open arms, no matter what, so. Well, if you make me think about it, I would say I'd like to have a family and raise them the way my parents raised me, with a certain moral conscience, and, I mean, God willing, they'll be happy. And if I, for instance, I happen to marry an American woman or some other one that's not Arab or Muslim at all, I mean, I'd at least like my children to actually understand and respect and admire their culture, because it's in their blood, and it'll always be there for them no matter what.
Once a student activist in Libya, Ali Al-Tarhouni is now Professor of Economics and Finance at the University of Washington in Seattle. He defected to the United States in the 1970s. 2 years ago, he participated in the founding of the National Conference of the Libyan Opposition in Exile. Distance doesn't prevent his constant dream to return to the places of his childhood and youth, to meet its people and revive his memories. While he waits, his children live in the US, split between the Libyan and the American cultures.
This is actually my dream. Day in and day out, you dream of something like this, whereby you're teaching in your homeland, teaching in Benghazi city, the old streets, the old smells. And, it's something that happens quite often. I always think about this.
I think that's what dictators do. They rob people from their dreams, their hopes. And again, I don't think it's a personal thing. The price that I pay, that was my choice. He robbed me from my dreams so far, there's no question about it. But that's a price that I'm willing to pay, because that's a decision that I took. I think what hurts me more is the 5 million Libyan souls that are robbed from their livelihood, their dreams, their futures, every day, every moment of their life. It's a beautiful, peaceful country that he took and made it a cesspool of poverty, hatred, backwardness. What would I do if I go back, right? I want to visit the grave of my father. I want to visit El-Marj, where I was born. I think on a personal level, I have some hiding spots that when we were teenagers we used to go to. I'd like to visit those. There's nothing in my mind, the last 33 years, than to take a dip in Juliana. Take a dip in the ocean, the Mediterranean. And I know for a fact that Benghazi, Tripoli, or Libya is free at last.
Salah El-Maghabi was imprisoned and, he says, tortured for his political activities while a student at Benghazi University. In exile in the United States, he continues his opposition to Gaddafi. In recent years, Gaddafi and his sons have invited opposition leaders in exile to return. El-Maghabi rejects any political reconciliation with Gaddafi.
The major loss, the big loss, is in the future of the country. The destruction that's been happening in Libya and the bleak prospect as long as the dictatorship is in control, because there is like waste of resources, waste of natural resources, human resources, you name it. And that's what hurts the most. If I surrender to the will of the dictator and go back to Libya and live on my knees, then I would feel that all my effort, all those years are gone for nothing, gone in vain. Nostalgia, as part of it, is recalling the past. We recall the days of the kingdom. People of my age who lived for a long time under the kingdom recall the times of the kingdom when we had constitution, we had parliament, we had freedom of press, and Libya had a potential, a huge potential.